After my bypass surgery, I did what I was told by the doctors, took my medicine, particularly a statin or two, and tried to eat what they were telling me to eat, and low fat, that type of thing, and take my medicine. So I was doing all of that, and then I got a call from the surgeon's assistant not too long after I started doing all that, and he said, "How are you feeling?" And I said, "Well, I guess I'm okay." And he said, "Well, your liver enzymes are going through the roof." And that was attributed to the statins. So that really got me thinking about this whole, post heart surgery thing, and cholesterol, and what got me into this predicament in the first place. I was trying to eat a certain amount of fiber, drinking fruit juices, cooking with vegetable oils, staying away from red meat and all that stuff that they typically tell you. This is a playbook that comes from the American Heart Association. A lot of it does. And listen, if you like this kind of content, please like and subscribe. And I'm going to get on with it here. We were told low fat was the thing to do since the 1980s. Stay off your butters and stuff like that, and stay away from saturated fat. There was the food pyramid where they're saying, hey, 6 to 11 servings of bread and cereals and pastas per day, and that cholesterol in the food caused an increase in cholesterol in the body, which I later found out was not true. So in the 60s, there was a Russian scientist by the name of Ansel Keys who did some studies on cholesterol. And what a lot of people don't know is that's when all that changed. That's when all the statins and everything came in and became, multi-billion-dollar business. And Ansel Keys, what they don't realize is that he cherry-picked his research and his studies. He studied 22 countries, but he only cherry-picked 7 of them that fit his narrative that cholesterol was the problem. So that right away there should raise a red flag with anyone. But you had like the sugar industry at the same time paying for research to be done to show that red meat, saturated fat, that was the real problem, not sugar. I was raised on sugary stuff, cereals and all kinds of different things. Just sugar was everywhere and still is in many ways. So they basically what they were trying to do was shift the blame off of themselves and onto the meat industry. Now, don't get me wrong, not every doctor falls into this category, but so many of them do. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it later, but be careful, when you go to your doctor. I'm not telling you to not go to your doctor. You definitely, should have some kind of doctor, but, question things. So this thing about, the cholesterol myth and statins, statins can cause all kinds of problems: muscular aches, joint problems, brain fog, dementia. They cause all kinds of side effects and don't really help the issue much at all, which is heart disease, coronary heart disease. How do you fix that? It also depletes your body of coenzyme Q10, which is very important for your heart muscle, your vascular system. The real problem I found, I started doing my own research, and one of the things I found was that it's not so much the LDL as the oxidative LDL. In other words, it gets oxidated by things like high carbs, seed oils, sugars, processed foods, and this causes this is the start, the beginning of coronary artery disease. It raises the inflammation that's in your body. There are better ways to measure coronary artery disease, which I found out in part of my research. And one of those is your triglycerides to HDL, the good cholesterol, ratio. And the optimal ratio is 1.0 or below. And the last time I had my test done, mine was 0.39, well below what's optimal. So that's a very important marker. Another one is your hip to waist ratio. That's another one. You can look that up. And you can find calculators that'll take care of that. You measure your hip compared to your waist. Mine's very good in that also. But chronic inflammation caused by seed oil, sugar, all the things I've mentioned before are really the real problems that we have. And it's there are in cholesterol, there are what they call the puffy or big molecules, and then there are the small ones. If your small ones are raised, that means there's a lot of oxidation going on. Again, getting back to the seed oils and the sugars and the carbs. If that is high, then yes, that becomes a problem because there's oxidation there. So that is something that you also need to look into, is do I have is the cholesterol in my serum, even if my LDL is high, what kind of particles are there? Are they the small or are they the bigger? You would think the bigger ones would be the problem, but they're not. It's the little ones that are the problem. So these are some of the reasons that I, feel the way that I do. Is I started doing my own research. And again, this channel is all about learning, it says in the title. So learn, research, do your own research. Don't take my word for it. Again, just look into it and dig a little deeper than maybe just what your doctor's telling you. Doctors are a good thing, but they go through years of medical school and they are taught things, and there's a lot of them, unfortunately, that do not think outside the box. And I think they need to. Question things. Why is it that after all these years of statins and lower saturated fat and so on, that heart disease is still going up? It's not going down. So there's got to be an explanation for this. Now, I'm not telling you to, fire your doctor. Doctors are necessary, but, ask them questions. Don't be afraid to ask them. And if you need to fire your doctor, then, and you feel you need to move on from them to another one, then, obviously that's a decision you have to make, but, ask them questions. Don't be afraid to ask them questions. So find a good doctor and ask questions. Get off the seed oils, the sugars, carbohydrates, the processed foods. And, if you like this content, there's some other videos that I have that I've done recently that go into more details about food, supplements, exercise, that type of thing. So if you like the content, please hit the like button and subscribe, and I will see you on the next video.